people will install Linux and then they'll be angry because it can't do all the things Windows can do. Well, it's open source. It's not like you bought the operating system. And if you want access to other programs, equivalent programs, you need an MP3 decoder and so on, you will have to download that from a different repository. Welcome back, Gadgeteers. Hopefully you can see that I'm now in my new studio. My wife, thankfully, took the time to set up this room for me, and I really love it. It's nice. I have a lot of room, and that's fairly important. So anyway, I thought today we would take a look at Fedora 36. I know many of you have probably seen other videos about Fedora 36 from other YouTubers, and I think everybody brings kind of a different angle to a distribution, so I'd like to give mine and see what you think. But we're not just going to look at the normal Fedora 36 distro. We're going to look at the Plasma, KDE Plasma distribution in particular. As you probably know, I'm a KDE user. I really love KDE Plasma. Some people don't think it's pretty or whatever. I really don't care about the beauty. I like it to be functional first, and it can be beautiful second. And there's so many changes you could make to any of these distributions. It's ridiculous. Now, many of the new features in Fedora that I've been reading about really won't affect me because they're talking about, primarily Gnome updates, and that's cool. But I will admit one thing. I have Gnome as well as KDE Plasma installed. So I'm a little bit spoiled because I use some KDE applications for tools to manage a hard drive or a partition or whatever. And I use some, I can't remember which one I said first, Gnome or KDE, depends. The software application for Gnome, personally, I think is far better than the one for KDE Plasma. So, depending on what I'm doing, I may use an app from one or the other. So, typically I install the Gnome edition of Fedora 36 or whatever Fedora version I'm on. Then, I believe the switcher between different graphical environments is a feature of Gnome. I can't be positive, but whenever I install Gnome, I get the login prompt, and then you can select which environment you want to install. My experience has been, if you install KDE Plasma first, for whatever reason that login doesn't appear, it's just a KDE Plasma login, even if you have Gnome installed. I'm sure there's a way to fix it. And if you know, drop me a message. Let me know and others who are wondering. But I just want to look at Plasma because I'm curious to see what applications we're talking about with Plasma only. So, in order to do that, let me clean stuff up here a little bit. So, what I'm going to do is create a new virtual machine. We'll call it Fedora 36 Plasma. It is 64-bit, and of course it's Linux. I can't believe they're saying it only needs 1 gigabyte. Anyway, I have 90 something available, so I usually kick it up to 16 gigabytes. And I do create the virtual hard disk because I don't want to do it later. And I usually use the VirtualBox disk image. And I prefer dynamically allocated. That way, we're only using the space for this virtual hard drive that we have software inside. So we install the operating system, and the virtual hard drive stretches and gets bigger only as needed. So if we only install 20, 30 gigabytes, speaking of which, let's go back for a minute. Oh, it's not going to let me go back. I did not pay attention to... Let's see if it asked me. Okay, here's where it asked me the size. So the virtual expansion is really nice because you don't take up a lot of room on your actual host computer unless it's necessary, which makes sense. Now, I think 8 gigabytes is really not enough, so I usually jack it up to 40, somewhere around there. You probably don't need that, but this is in case I want to do something in the future with this virtual machine. I'm going to create the hard drive. Before I power it up, I'm going to go into the settings and go to System, Processor. And right now it's set for 1 CPU. I'm going to give it 4 cores. I have a 3950 AMD and it has 16 cores available, so I'm pretty sure it can handle 4 cores. We'll click OK. And I'm going to go ahead and start it up. Now I do have... Boy, that text looks awfully small. It says select a virtual optical disk file or physical optical drive containing a disk to start your new virtual machine from. So I'm going to click this option here. Then I'm going to click Add. And right here is Fedora KDE Live x86. By the way, when I downloaded this, I used BitTorrent software, and I've heard talk about banning and blocking all BitTorrent use, and I think that would be a mistake because there's just tons of software. You can get so much faster with BitTorrent than downloading from a link, say, on fedoraproject.org. Alright, I'm going to click that file. I didn't tell it to go on, but... Creating process for virtual machine. I kind of recall this from the last time I created a virtual machine. I honestly don't know what it's doing at this point. It says it's starting the VM. And the VM is here. I'm just going to click open and see if that helps. No? I guess it does. Seems odd. It's still there. I'm going to continue on and see what happens. We'll go with start. And this will be a little bit more difficult for you to see, so we're going to see if we can make it larger. Okay, hopefully that's a little bit larger. We may have to adjust it as we go through this. So we've got a couple options. Start the Fedora installation. Okay, normally I don't test the media, but in this case I'm going to go ahead and test it. And it should give me some kind of indication that it's doing a test. There we are right there. It's quite fast, even if it's not a virtual machine. If you're coming from a USB 3.0 device, thumb drive. Okay, so it's going to go ahead and start now. The typical startup. Not sure what layout changes it's talking about. For right now, I'm going to close that. And you could go ahead and use this virtual machine right now. It's essentially a live virtual machine. Most people maybe don't know what that means anymore, but you could basically take this image and you could boot it up on any computer using the USB port. And if you did that, you would get this particular system. And you would not disturb or change the original OS that the host system is running. So that's a nice feature. It's a good way to test and see whether the Linux version that you're interested in will actually work on your computer. I like doing it. It's a good test to do. Okay, let us install to hard drive. I'm going to make this even bigger. I'm blind, so I sympathize with people that can't see well. All right, English language is already selected, and the version is United States. I'll click continue. So you got to pay attention here. So no user is going to be created yet, and there's no root account, but obviously you can't continue the installation. So we're going to start with this one, and notice I select the drive and the checkbox goes away. We actually need that checkbox, so theoretically you don't have to select it since it's already the selected drive, and then click done. Okay, still can't begin installation, so the root account is disabled and there's no user that's going to be created. I think the next thing as a minimum you could do is create a user account. Let's test that. I don't know that guy. Do you know that guy? I don't know that guy. Oh, that ain't good. I have new glasses as of today that I'm getting used to, so please forgive me if I fat finger my keyboard. Okay, so notice here that there's a checkbox that before was not checked by default but now is. Add administrative privileges to this user account. Wheel group membership. That makes you sudo. So super user if you want. You have all the privileges that root would have. If you're creating user accounts later on, I would say no, you don't want that feature. So I'm going to go ahead and click done. And we've now done the minimum requirement to start the installation, but I'm going to go ahead and enable the root account. My usual junk password. I'm not going to allow root SSH login. If I want to change that, I can in the future, but no matter what, it's simply not a good idea to allow root to do a secure shell login, which means from a remote system into this new system we're creating. So by default, we are not going to allow that feature. And I click done, and it's satisfied with all the selections I've made. And we're going to begin the installation. Notice it's using BTRFS, Butter RFS, Butter file system, Butter FS. Butter FS is the default file system, and it has been for, I don't know, since like Fedora 32 or 33. And it is the default file system that's installed versus ext4, I believe it was. So the installation is probably not going to take very long. I'm thinking 5 to 10 minutes. So I'm going to pause here and come back once the installation is completed. Okay, installation is complete. You can't see the button here, but I'm going to reboot, And while I reboot, I need to make sure that I take the disk out. I believe that's reboot. Okay, no, it did not reboot yet. So let's go ahead and we're going to shut this down completely. Just makes my life easier to get that virtual DVD out. And let's check settings. Storage. Well, we're going to try this. Are you sure you want to delete the optical drive? No, I don't want to delete the optical drive. I want to pop the CD out. Okay, here we go. Remove disk from virtual drive. That's what we want to do. So now we have it empty. And note that I got this option here with the drop down arrow. And I'm going to say OK. Theoretically, our new system should boot right up. Alright, I have it set for scaled mode. Welcome to Grub. How many people know what Grub is? I think anybody that's using Linux knows what Grub is. If you don't know, Grub is the bootloader for Linux. So Windows has its own bootloader. It's proprietary, closed source. And of course, most Linux versions, I'm going to say most, I'm going to go out on a limb here, have the Grub bootloader. Alright, let's go ahead and log in. Size is the screen going to come up as. There's that iBus attention. I usually don't worry about these kind of things until I've done a full update of the system, because there are so many little problems like this that get ironed out just by doing the update. I'm not going to do the update right now, but something to keep in mind. All right. I believe there is an update of the VBox guest editions. Seems like a message is going to pop up at some point in here telling me that there is an update. We'll see what version it says. So the real thing I wanted to take a look at is what software do we have installed by default? So there's the security updates. We could do those updates. I'm not going to do those right now. And here we have the favorites. Now you can add any application into favorites. You may be managing your firewall because it's a server, although I don't recommend having a GUI on a server. But these days it's more and more useful, although it does make security risks when you have a GUI on a server. We can add it to the panel, which is down here. We can pin to the taskbar. Add to favorites, which I'm going to go ahead and do, and then we go back to favorites, and you can see the firewall here. So by default we have Firefox, our browser, Contact, an email tool. I don't know if it has, well, let's find out. I don't know if it has a calendar built inside it. Let's just see what it has. Mail, contacts, calendar, to-do list, feeds. So it does have pretty much everything. The only downside I see to using these types of calendars is that it's not really central. Well, let me rephrase that. It's not in the cloud. So unfortunately, you can get all your information right here, but you can't if you go to another computer. Hopefully, and it's been a long time since I've used this tool, there is a way to do that now. But I haven't tried. If anybody else has, let me know if you've set up Contact to work in some type of cloud environment, so no matter what system you're on, you can get access. Okay, I'm really curious to see what software we have. We have system settings. Let's take a look. So system settings hasn't really changed all that much. If you are a Mac user and you're used to Mac OS and the changes are very slow, glacial, for a user it's a good thing. For somebody who's doing development or they need certain features, it can be really frustrating. But for your average user, they don't want to have to deal with a new interface every single time. So this interface is, for the most part, just like before. Let's go back to appearance here. Let's do Breeze Dark. Ooh. All right. Window decorations, things that you can change. If you want to, you can get new or different window decorations. Many people do. Let's see what they've got there. Or as I like to say, let's see if it actually works. So we can scroll down. There's several different kinds. I usually won't bother downloading it unless it's got at least 3 stars, and they're really, at least these ones, do not. You used to be able to sort the order. Let's see. So they got preview, detailed tiles, view mode. They used to have it so you could sort it by rating. Well, let's try one of them. We'll install Lace Aurora theme, and we're going to say use. So these little window tools should change, and they do. Not all that much of a difference, but I do like the color. These basic ones are what you get with Fedora. This, of course, is my host machine. That's why these ones didn't change. And these ones down here we have changed, so now any software we open up will open with that new pretty look. Fonts. Oh, let me go back. One of the changes that they did with Fedora is change the font for the system to Noto Sans. Again, it doesn't really matter to me, but it may to you. You can choose different icon sets. We're now on Breeze Dark because we changed it. Font management, splash screen. There really isn't anything else here. We can get new ones. Anime, if you're interested. Some of these are really beautiful. Alright, well, we're not going to do one of those. Just the different things you can do to set up the look of your operating system, of Plasma specifically. Plasma style. We could go with, I think we'll do it. Let's do Breeze Dark. There's also Oxygen. I really like Oxygen. Let's see if it makes any change. Not that we can see, but I'm sure there is some change somewhere. Alright, so let's go back. We have Dolphin, which is, of course, the KDE Plasma file manager. And here we are at Home. Home being your user's home folder. No documents, nothing on the desktop yet. You can see on my actual system up here I have a bunch of icons. You can put an icon on the desktop if you want. Let's see if we can drag Firefox up here. And it doesn't seem to be working quite right. How about right click? wasn't what I was hoping for. You can briefly see a menu, but I can't really see what it's saying. We have console, very important. I really like that the console is one of the favorites because a lot of the time you're going to need the console right away for simple things like, let's see if we can do a DNF list. And while we're doing that, let's enlarge the font. So DNF list, as far as I know, doesn't require any administrative privileges. Anything else like DNF update would. But remember, our user is actually in the sudoers group. However, even though that is the case, at least historically, you have to say you're going to do DNF update. It will ask you for your password again. Lots of stuff there. Let's see if we can do a DNF update Firefox. Okay, so you have to run it with super user privileges, which I should. We'll do sudo DNF update Firefox. So it's not enough to be an administrator. You also have to issue the sudo command. And it will ask me for my password. It'll ask you for the password, and then for a little while, a couple of minutes, it will no longer ask you for the password, which is kind of nice. But we are a member of the wheel group, so we still have to type sudo before we run an administrative command. Or you can run sudo bash and become the root user, and then you don't have to run sudo in front of the commands that you issue all the time. So by default, there aren't very many repositories. We would have to add some repositories to get the non-free packages, they actually are free, but they are not open source. So everything that's on here right now, for the most part, I'm going to go with nearly 100%, are all open source, possibly 100%. If you add other repositories, you get access to software that you probably will need to fully take advantage of your new Linux system. You can see what we get by default. It's not that bad. But people will install Linux and then they'll be angry because it can't do all the things Windows can do. Well, it's open source. It's not like you bought the operating system. And if you want access to other programs, equivalent programs, you need an MP3 decoder and so on, you will have to download that from a different repository. Okay, so we've installed Firefox update. What else do we have? This program is the software program you can use to download new applications. My personal attitude about this particular program is that it's a pale version of Gnome's software. Gnome's software will let you update the entire operating system. So it's possible you can here, but I haven't experienced the ability to do that just yet. So let's install KTorrent, because I know I'll be using that if I want to download a torrent file, such as an operating system. And I know I said this before, I'm going to say it again. It's a significant speed boost to get that via torrent instead of via a link and download from a server. KTorrent is installed. Let's find out. I start typing ktorrent, and alright, there it is. So we could add a torrent. Of course, this isn't the way you do it normally. You're in a browser. You will click a torrent link, and then from the link, you'll get a request to download that torrent. You can also select how many files inside the torrent you want to download. So if you only want a certain file or two, and you're downloading, say, 10 files, you can select only those files. Kind of off topic here, but anyway, I've had this program crash a couple times, and so I usually have Gnome installed and KDE Plasma, and there's a bunch of Gnome tools that I like. So I'm kind of spoiled, and I don't think I'll ever be able to get away with just running Plasma. All right, let's go ahead and look at, by default, oh, I don't know. Administration, DNF, Dragora. Haven't used that in a very long time. But you can use it to install and remove software instead of using the command line like we did to install Firefox. Development, so they've got a Qt5 development. I don't know what that is. I don't do development. I'm just going to say that right out of the gate. Education, LibreOffice, games, Mahjong, patience, graphics. You notice some of the big guns for graphics are missing. One is, of course, GIMP. The interwebs. We have Kmail. It's another program I very rarely use anymore. I think that's the case for most of us because we're using cloud-based email. But if you set up your own server and you don't want to rely on Google for their email, this is a possible method you could use. KTorrent, Multimedia, Elisa, and Komoso. I have not heard of either of these programs. It's been a minute. So this is a music player. I do want to see what it looks like. Not bad. I've seen worse. So there's nothing to play because we don't have anything here. So I can't say whether or not it would be able to play an MP3. I'm going to guess not, because one of the first things you do when you set up a system is get access to new repositories and download decoders for video and audio. Overall, decent setup, though. I do like that. Where were we? Internet, multimedia, Office. This one's basically required. I can't imagine at this point any Linux version that doesn't have some kind of Office installed. It's going to be the thing that users are really going to want out of the gate. Writer and Calc are probably the two most used programs. There we have Writer. I believe you can change the view. So right now we have the old-fashioned standard toolbar, but if you want to, you can do tabbed. We're going to apply it to all. I think what they're saying here is every LibreOffice application versus just apply it to Writer. I'm going to do apply it to all. Okay. All right. So now we have tabs. And this is kind of the style of Office, Microsoft Office. So if you're used to that, the hardest thing for this program is to find the settings you need to make because, of course, Office is going to put them in a slightly different place. But it's doable. All right, we're going to close Office. We did settings. System. We have the file manager Dolphin, Fedora Media Writer, a great program. If you're running on a computer and you want to make a USB bootable, and you're going to put an ISO image on that drive, it'll create bootable USB media for you so you can install it on somebody else's computer. I believe you can get Fedora Media Writer even if you're on Windows, so you can download it and it will download the ISO and prepare a bootable USB device for you so you're ready to go when you want to install the operating system. Info Center. Now here is another. I'm going to open KDE Partition Manager. I do have to enter the password. Okay, so if you have a lot of hard drives that you've plugged in, whether they're internal or USB, I guess this tool is okay, but I really like the tool that comes with Gnome, and I can't remember the name right now. It might be G-parted. I can't remember, but it's great. I love it. This one's okay. I wish I could tell you the differences. Again, to me, this is one of those Plasma applications that I have more problems with, freezing and such. And you really don't want any freezing. So we've got 4.7 gigabytes in the root. And boot has 1. So far we've used 4.07 gigabytes of our main partition, where the home directory would be located. Alright, let's see what else we got. We were in System. There was another tool I wanted to look at. Info Center. I don't know if this tool was on previous versions of KDE Plasma. If it was, it might have been a little bit different. But you do get some ideas about what version of software you have. You may hear from time to time a new KDE Plasma version came out, and you can compare what number you have with the available version. The one thing about distributions, Linux distributions, is just because, let's say, version 6 came out of KDE Plasma, that doesn't mean you're going to get it right away. So the distro, people have to, they've got to work on making sure that it fits in okay and it's functional and it doesn't cause any problems with any of the other packages in that distribution, and that's a lot of work. So if you don't get the latest and the greatest, don't be disappointed. You could install it if you want to. Personally, unless it's a test system, I really don't recommend that. I would go with doing a system update, DNF update like we did earlier. And they will give you the latest version of Plasma that you can get. When you get outside, and this is strictly Fedora, when you get outside of that 6-month window and a new version of Fedora comes out, the previous version starts only getting security updates. So you won't see new versions of KDE Plasma come out. So you really got to go to the new version, and still it might not be version 6 of KDE Plasma in the new version of Fedora Linux. So let's say 37 comes out. So you do have to be patient. Now, Fedora is usually pretty cutting edge, so you can subscribe to the Rawhide repository, which basically means you are a tester and you're going to get every single update, and you will be assuming a greater risk if you join Rawhide. So I don't advise that either. I feel that that is purely a testing platform. But they have these, I think they call them daily commits. So they're working on packages, and it's like, okay, let's compile our daily package, what we got done today. Firefox, let's go ahead and compile Firefox and put it in Rawhide. It wasn't working quite right. Everything seems okay except for this and that feature, but let's go. We have to put it in Rawhide. So Rawhide is really, really cutting edge. I don't recommend it. So we got a system monitor, which gives you an idea of memory, disk usage, CPU, system, network. You can see I'm doing absolutely nothing right now on the network. Wired connection, my mistake. Nope, there really is nothing going on. Applications. And we can decide which way we want to organize these. Right now we have CPU utilization descending, which is nice if you have an application or whatever that's spinning out of control and your system is bogging down. You can't get that piece of software to respond when you try to close it using the widget up here. You can go, and I'm not going to do this. Well, I guess I could. We don't really need KTorrent anymore. Kill is pretty harsh. I don't want to say it's going to cause damage, but the likelihood increases. So we try to be nice, and terminate you could do 2. You can try hang up, which is a little bit nicer. Let's try hup and see what happens. Yeah, it responded to it and it's gone. But reserve, kill, and terminate for, hey, I tried hang it up, hup, and it didn't work. So time to get more harsh because this particular program is spinning out of control. We have history. Give us an idea of what's going on with CPU utilization, memory, networking. We're now up to 2.2 gigabytes of memory in use, but no swap yet. That's a good thing. Swap, of course, is disk-based artificial or virtual memory. So you run in your system, you have 16 gigabytes, and you begin to get really close to utilizing all 16 gigabytes. Swap will begin taking what you're not using of that memory, at least right then, and it'll put it into swap on your hard drive. If you have an SSD, swap back and forth is a little bit faster. If you have a regular hard drive, your system is bogging down and you don't have really enough memory for what you're trying to do with the system. So if this was up to 15 and we started hitting swap, that's not a good thing. Hitting it meaning this number goes up. It actually records a number. And if it's gigabytes, you know you need more memory. So you can use the history function here to check it out. And we have processes, which we kind of looked at just a minute ago. This is just a bigger way to see them. If we go back to overview, they're here, but it's a little bit smaller. So all in all, I like this tool. And again, I can't honestly tell you if it was here before or not. I haven't really used it, but I like it. I can see where it would come in very useful. All right. What else do we have? That was system, utilities. Oh yes, I gotta select my emoji. That's top on my list. One of my favorite utilities is KCalc. Yeah, you guessed it, a calculator. Really, these other ones I haven't used or don't use often. KWrite is a basic text editor. Kmouse tool, if I'm not mistaken, lets you make changes to your mouse settings. All of this too, by the way, I'm going to close all this. You don't want to have to click through all these different applications. Start typing. Let's just do mouse. Kmouse tool comes right up. We don't have to remember what group was it in, where was it at. It's basically right there at your fingertips. And that's how I open most apps if they're not I don't put them down here on the toolbar or whatever. Now you'll notice also I don't see any virtual screens here. If you look in my actual operating system, I've created 4, 5, did I do? Well, anyway. Yeah, I did. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, 4. Virtual screens are kind of nice because you can switch to another screen with a whole different set of applications. I'm not sure if you can see that, to be honest. I'm betting you didn't see that switch. Anyway, I just switched my virtual screens to a whole different set. But it all depends on how well Linux works. Well, not just Linux, but OBS Studio. What else do we have? Any other utilities? Spectacle. As far as I know, let's try and do a screen cap. I don't know if it'll grab print screen. It might do it to my main system. Doesn't seem to be the case. I'm on Fedora 34, but I've heard that this tool is supposed to pop up, which looks like it did. Let's open another application. Go back to Spectacle and we'll say we want to do a rectangular region. And we say take a new screenshot, and we will select the chunk that we want, and we'll click in here. I think you have to double click, sorry. And there's our screenshot. So unfortunately, because this is in a virtual machine, I can't be sure what will happen if I hit print screen in Fedora 36, but it's supposed to bring up, from the reading I've done, it's supposed to bring the tool up immediately instead of just doing a print screen of your entire desktop. And in my case, I have 3 monitors running, so that's nearly useless. I guess in an emergency, if I had to save something really quick, it would be handy. And we have system settings right here in our little taskbar, Discover and Dolphin. So I'm really impressed with what we have straight out of the gate. It's been a long time since I looked at just a KDE Plasma installation. There are many, many other programs I would want. And again, many of them are not open source, but they're free. Taken as an example, the NVIDIA drivers for your video card. They're not on here. I don't know if there's any free or open source NVIDIA drivers right now. But if you want the NVIDIA drivers, you either have to join a repository for NVIDIA or download them and do the installation yourself. My experience has been it's not really that hard anymore. Prior to, I was like Fedora 20, 21, 22, it was a lot of work. And my laptop has an NVIDIA, I think it's NVIDIA 2000 chip on the laptop. And the last time I did the driver installation, I think I did it in like 2 minutes. So that's the good news. The style, I think it's really boring. I'm complaining mostly about the wallpaper. You can get new stuff. Or one of the things that I like to do, let's just close this real quick. And wallpaper type. Picture of the day. And who is going to provide us with the picture of the day? I've found that Bing, of all sources, actually does quite good. They have some interesting pictures. And now we have the picture of the day, so that'll change every day. We did a couple of changes with the overall look of Plasma. I think by default it is not a see-through screen, so I think one of the changes we did that. The other one, of course, that we did was the widgets. And there's a ton of different widgets that you can get. So there's quite a bit of customization that you can do in any distribution. So don't feel that you're stuck with what is presented to you. All you have to do is explore the settings in the case of KDE Plasma, and there's so many changes you could make. All right, I think that about wraps it up. I've had a lot of fun tonight. I am using Plasma, but I also have Gnome installed, and I like the different options. Like, for example, if you're doing file management and you download something from Firefox, it will open up in Nautilus, which is Gnome's file management tool. What I like about that is you can automatically, well, not automatically, you have to click a link or a button, and you can say, if it's a zip file, uncompress this and put it in the folder that you select. And I don't recall seeing that in Dolphin. I think it opens up Nautilus when it's time to unzip something. At least that's my experience with Fedora 34. So I'm not going to tell you, yes, that's what will happen. Hopefully you've learned something and this is useful to you. As always, I hope you enjoyed the video, and consider liking and subscribing. And I really like comments, so if you leave me some comments, we can get a discussion going on about some of the changes I've missed. I'm sure there's many, and other things like available software or programs that you like in KDE Plasma. Thank you for watching. See you next time on Fast Gadgets. This video was made possible with support from viewers like you. If you find this video useful, consider becoming a patron for as little as $1 a month at patreon.com/fastgadgets.